Hi everyone, Tally and Farrell here from Board of It, and welcome to our review of Great Western Trail. We thought we'd cover this Cowboy classic in preparation for the widespread release of the second edition. We'll cover what it is about Great Western Trail that puts it solidly in the top 15 board games of all time, what does the expansion add, and should you get the second edition?
First things first though, Great Western Trail is for 2 to 4 players or 1 to 4 players if you grab the second edition. But in either case, you and your friends will be cattle ranchers who will repeatedly drive their cattle along the Great Western Trail to Kansas City, at which point you'll put them on the train in Tally's meta to the seaside. Have a nice little holiday.
I go to the seaside. With core elements of spicy hand management and deck building, Great Western Trail gets off to a great start. Then it steadily reveals itself as a deep Euro sandbox with multiple routes and strategies, all of them equal parts interesting.
I mean, we've played this a fair few times now, and I'm still finding new strategies to pursue or little aspects to focus on that I haven't focused on before. But let's begin by driving those cattle
to the beach. In Great Western Trail, you'll start with a standard deck of cows, mainly low value. The long-term goal is to reach the end of the trail on this board with firstly a hand of all different cows and ideally most or all of them as high value as possible. Each turn, you'll move your cowboy up to 3 spaces, ending on a tile. Then you can do both actions on that tile in either order. Some of these actions will allow you to discard a cow from your hand, thus building up a better hand for when you get to Kansas City. When you do get to Kansas City, you'll present your hand, then you'll receive money equal to the value of unique cows in your hand. You'll also take a disc from your player board and place it in a city with an equal or lower value. This will usually get you victory points at the end of the game, as well as instantly upgrading an element of your player board. Maybe now you can move further, hold more cards, or unlock new actions. But that's not the whole game. Oh no. Along the way, on these tiles are multiple systems to interact with and to use to your advantage to get more points. Maybe you'll go to the cattle market and buy cows of a higher value, meaning you can then deliver them further to earn more points. But not only that, the cow cards themselves are worth VPs. Alternatively, maybe you'll become a property developer, building tiles along the trail that only you can use. Or maybe you think the train man from Matrix Revolutions is the coolest character of all time and you really want to be him. You can also do that. Here you'll focus on pushing your train up the track, leaving your discs in the stations as you go, upgrading your player board as you earn VPs. So you'll do multiple loops of the board, and each time you do, you'll add new workers to the available workers section. These are fellas that you can hire that are all about increasing your power in the aforementioned systems. Having more craftsmen will allow you to build better buildings, for example. As you add more workers to the board, this token will be continuously pushed down until it falls off the end of the board, signalling the end of the game. Then you'll count up the VPs and declare the winner. Now, we won't bury the lead. Great Western Trail deserves its accolades. This is a tightly designed Eurogame with a wonderful variety of interlocking strategies, topped off with a great theme. The turns are kept generally short, meaning it moves along at a good clip and most importantly, keeps the pressure on.
You never have enough money to do everything you'd like to do on a single loop of the board, which means you're continuously faced with tough decisions on where to spend your money. And for us, difficult decisions are what make a board game pop. So many parts of this game are excellent, but let's begin by talking about my favourite, which is also the core of the game, the hand and deck management. Usually in games, this is something I'm not a big fan of. I just find that often maybe using your cards to travel in these games or for the actions on the cards, and that leaves your turns up to the luck of the draw. And this tends to mean that turns in those games have peaks and troughs, and it just feels a little bit unbalanced and unwieldy. Here, because the cards don't do that, and all you need to do is have a good hand of cards, it's just much cleaner, simpler, and nicer. And the trail offers you ample ways to cycle through these cards, often for a reward. And what this does, and what's crucial to our enjoyment of it, is it creates very hard choices. Maybe you have a perfect hand of cards for market, you're probably not going to do any better, but then you step on this tile. And if you get rid of this cow, it's going to give you money, and that money will allow you to buy exactly what you wanted to buy on the next tile, which is going to be better for you in the long run because you can do more. But because you're going to get rid of a cow, you have to draw a new one, and you know that you're very likely to get a duplicate, which isn't worth anything at market. So then you're going to get less money and likely less VPs when you go to Kansas City. So what do? There are two key things that I love about this. One is that you can very easily unlock an action that will allow you to permanently cull cards from your hand. If you put your mind to it, you can literally create a super deck with zero fluff. And I find that in most deck builders, it's actually surprisingly difficult to manage your deck. Often I don't have the control that I would like, which you do get here. Number two is that the reward for building your deck is immediate and very apparent. You get to the marketplace, and every single time you're getting more money and more victory points. Often in other deck builder games, because the game is a deck builder, the reward is more nebulous and prolonged. You're getting a slightly better action. Maybe you're getting good action, but it's situational. You just don't see these effects immediately. See you, buddy.
Also important to the success of Great Western Trail is the trail. It's a core part of what keeps the game interesting and has players coming back time and time again. You have a few standard tiles which you'll become familiar with after a game or two, but the fact that they're placed randomly during setup is crucial. The order in which the tiles are placed along the trail will completely shake up how you approach the game, because one tile's placement in relation to another will force you to consider how to take on the entire trail. It means that each game needs a different approach, and then factoring in the double-sided player building tiles, you have even more variety and strategy thrown into the mix. There's just something addictive about this Alexander Pfister system of looping around the board over and over again. It's a combination of your situation getting a little better each time, meaning the decisions get more interesting, and the endorphin hit you get when you beat your personal best at market. You'll also generally get a lovely sense of progression throughout the entire game, from unlocking your player board, delivering to more distant cities, obtaining workers, and building buildings.
Okay, so you've got spicy hand management and an addictive gameplay loop. What else? Well, deep strategic gameplay with multiple avenues to explore. But you could say there are three main routes of strategy to pursue. The first being the cowboys, the cattle cards, and the cattle market. The second being the station masters, the train line, and the stations. And the third being the craftsmen and the personal buildings. Also, you have a lot of subsystems like the objective cards, hazards, and the station tiles, all of which can be used to generate VP and put you over the edge.
The game provides a veritable sandbox and lets you go about it how you wish. Do you want to hire a lot of station masters and drive your train to the end of the line where you can buy big VP? Or do you want to fill your player board with cowboys and have the finest cattle herd in all of Texas? Alternatively, do you just want to do a bit of everything, because that is also totally fine. Nearly everything in this game interlocks seamlessly, and it's often difficult to tell where one element ends and another begins. There's a lot to see, try and do here, and nearly everything you do is at the expense of something else, so you're constantly forced to make decisions between multiple equally enticing options, which is an element of game design we love.
What about the negatives? Honestly, there aren't many in this game. The biggest one would be, if you're looking for some spicy interaction, you aren't going to find it here, considering it's a very classic, dry Euro, and that might be a deal breaker for you. On a more personal note, we probably think the weakest link in the game is the objective cards. Just in the fact that what they ask for is often a little bit uninteresting, and they can also be a little bit unfair, because they provide negative points if you don't fulfill them, and sometimes they ask for specific colours of items, and those colours might not be available when you have the chance to purchase that type of item. So we actually tend to ignore these when we play. And the other thing that we're not a big fan of is how you have to swap out a worker tile if you obtain a station tile. Because workers are quite expensive to buy, they're crucial to gameplay, and it's just the fact that even if you want to get VP from a station tile, you often still have to work very hard at it. It just seems like too brutal a trade for us. But quite clearly, these are very minor quibbles, considering that these are elements of gameplay you can willfully ignore and still have a great time and even win.
Now we come to the second edition. If you don't already have Great Western Trail and you're a fan of big crunchy Euros, it's a no-brainer. Get the second edition. From our understanding, the gameplay has been tightened up in minor ways here and there via information and feedback from thousands of games. It also includes minor elements from the Rails to the North expansion and a new type of cow. Lastly, the artwork and components are drastically improved and diversified, less crusty old men in this version. Also, the meeples have little cowboy hats that you can pop on. If you already own Great Western Trail, it's probably not worth getting the second edition unless you're an absolute fanatic, or you can get a really good price for your current copy. So what if you don't already own Great Western Trail, but you can pick up a copy of the original version for cheap? Well, that's a tricky one. An edge the original version does have over the second edition is that the brilliant expansion, Rails to the North, is only compatible with the original version. What this expansion does is add a second board over the top of the first, which expands the railway network and unlocks a new action, which will let you build these little houses along towns and cities, which will give you all sorts of bonuses and let you deliver your cows to new cities.
It's a near perfect expansion because it fits in seamlessly, it feels like it was always part of the game, and it very cleverly expands the decision space. And because a lot of the minor gameplay changes in the second edition are actually taken from this expansion, it could be argued that the most complete Great Western Trail package currently available would be to have the original and Rails to the North. So if you can find them both for cheap, it's not a bad proposition.
So what's the conclusion? Well, the point of this review was to show you why Great Western Trail is such a brilliant game, and hopefully we've done that. Therefore, you won't be regretting whichever version you decide to pick up. But if you don't already have Great Western Trail, then the second edition is probably the way to go. Even if you're all about expansions, there will eventually be a second edition Rails to the North.
And if you already own Great Western Trail, then it's hard to recommend the second edition because of the minor changes, unless it's your favourite game of all time, or you know you're going to play it dozens and dozens of more times. If you have no version of Great Western Trail, then there's certainly nothing wrong with picking up the original, as long as you can get it for a nice price. We're actually going to stick with our original copy, but we are super interested to see what happens with Great Western Trail Argentina and New Zealand, which are going to be future entries in this series. So that was our review of Great Western Trail, and hopefully it was helpful either for which edition to get or just the game itself. And if it was, we'd really appreciate if you could like and subscribe. And please let us know what you think about Great Western Trail. If you have the second edition, do you like it? Is it good? Would you recommend it? Maybe you can help some other people.
Yep.
But most importantly, thanks for watching and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.